Sustainable development has become an urgent and essential requirement in global economic activity, but also an emerging challenge against the backdrop of international economic integration. Sustainability-related activities are integrated more deeply into the economic, social, and environmental structures of each nation. This means that enterprises are considered one of key factors that play a significant role in shaping and investing in innovation. What about the current context in Vietnam? Have businesses been aware of their responsibilities and involvement in such activities? Have legal frameworks been sufficient enough to support them in doing such activities? And what solutions to be done? We'll look for an in-depth analysis with our expert today, Mr. Florian Beranek, Principal Expert of Societal Responsibility, UN Industrial Development Organization.
Hello, Mr. Beranek, and welcome to our BIZLINE program. Now, first of all, I'd like to ask, why is there a stress in Vietnam and also the global business community in regard to sustainable development in recent years?
Okay, recent years showed the world through better access to information. People just know what is going on everywhere, that we are on a wrong way. We are on a wrong path in the sense of using too many resources. This means sooner or later we would run out of resources. And this is actually something which is going on for years and decades, but now it became more visible. An increasing awareness is growing that we have to do something. Businesses have to understand and admit that there are two main resources, so the material and the human resources are not endless. So they have to have a careful look into their operation. They have to reflect carefully, what are my impacts and what can I improve and where can I make an impact in terms of less resources, better treatment of people, more equal distribution of income and wealth.
Needless to say, sustainable development is a trend that business cannot ignore. So what are the trends that Vietnam should follow?
It's like going to school. If you want to learn something, if you want to improve your skills, you cannot go from 0 to 5. You cannot start in primary school and tomorrow go to university. What is needed is a step-by-step development. Basically important to have a solid foundation. And that's what I think is the most important task we are facing here in Vietnam. This means that we have to have in place transparent governance in a company, that we have to have a culture of integrity, so knowing just what is the right thing to do, but also a culture of innovation, so creating new things, questioning things. And this is then building up step by step more and more resilient companies which are able to cope with the challenges we are facing in terms of environmental problems, in terms of social issues, but also economic crisis.
What methods should Vietnam adopt to realize the goals of sustainable development and green growth?
There are different models, different ways of thinking which can be applied depending on the development stage of a country. What Vietnam will need as a model is to clean up their own house, to improve their own house in terms of the national consumption, the domestic consumption. So initiatives like the UN is driving quite often on sustainable consumption and production and resource efficiency programs, on general awareness on corporate social responsibility, which is aiming at the national level, not at the international level, will be critical. So I would not see a specific model which you just can copy-paste, because copy-paste does not work, because each country is unique. Vietnam has a lot of uniqueness and Vietnam has a lot of potential, because the domestic market is big, 90 million people, increasing middle class, better education. So those people will demand more, and we have to support this. And that's why the focus on the international supply chain is okay, but I would love to see more efforts and more equal level playing field for the domestic market, for domestic companies.
A new development stage has opened to Vietnam after world leaders agreed on 17 Sustainable Development Goals and the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development in 2015. Meanwhile, the Paris Agreement within the framework of COP21 has entered into force on November 4th. These are two of the world's most important multilateral agreements in recent times.
Xem hết lại trong tất cả các cam kết quốc tế mà Việt Nam đã tham gia, trong đó có cam kết thực hiện mục tiêu phát triển bền vững. Xem hết các nghị quyết của Đảng, các nghị quyết của Chính phủ thì gần như chúng ta đã rất đầy đủ. Nhưng mà tôi vẫn đặt ra một câu hỏi hàng ngày với tất cả mọi người, với tất cả mọi nơi là bây giờ chúng ta làm thế nào?
For Vietnam, the country has recently conceptualized the implementation of the agreements through the National Assembly's resolutions and the Prime Minister's instructive documents and directions. The action plan aims to recognize the UN's 17 global SDGs and 169 specific targets as well as the Paris Agreement by 2030.
Thách thức của biến đổi khí hậu nó đặt ra với loài người, với thế giới và đặt ra cho thời đại hôm nay một cái quyết định quan trọng. Cái thỏa thuận Paris người ta cho là một cuộc cách mạng có tính lịch sử, một cuộc cách mạng đẹp nhất như Tổng thống Pháp nói. Bởi vì đây là một cuộc cách mạng để giải quyết một cái xung đột rất lớn giữa mô hình phát triển không bền vững, một mô hình phát triển mà như Phó Thủ tướng đã nói là chúng ta phải trả lời với các thế hệ tương lai là mô hình này có để lại cho tương lai một tương lai tốt đẹp hay không.
Vietnam have joined a number of international agreements related to sustainable development, but realizing these goals relies much on enterprises. So how are Vietnamese businesses aware of their responsibilities?
I'm living now 7 years here in Vietnam and working for the United Nations Industrial Development Organization and coming across quite a lot in the country, talking with a lot of mainly Vietnamese companies. The problem is still that the communication is still on a level which is hard to understand for people. Which is hard to understand because it's using a certain jargon, it's using the big things, the big words, global approaches, and that's why I think most of them are not really aware and understanding. They might know the topic, they might have heard about SDGs or Agenda 2030, but what it means for them, how it translates into my business practice, this is still a big challenge. We have to make it clear to people that earning money today is good, but you have to make sure that you also can earn money tomorrow and the day after. So in general, the awareness I think is still rather poor, but there are certain steps now on the way, and I hope that this domestication, this making the people, the owners, and making people proud of doing it, at the same time rewarding them and supporting them, because finally it's the responsibility of each individual as a consumer, as a worker, as an owner of an enterprise or a member of the government.
Now, regarding the environmental criteria, we foresee that Vietnamese exports will be examined based on its carbon footprint. So what are the criteria that we need to satisfy, and how can businesses lower its carbon footprint?
Okay, the criteria, you're absolutely right. So carbon footprinting is increasingly demanded by the global markets. Unfortunately, it is still a very blur area because there are just so many labels and calculation methods out in the market that it still is it's difficult to understand for consumers. We from UNIDO are currently discussing with, amongst others, with MOIT here, how we can bring carbon footprinting in a standardized way to Vietnamese businesses. Your second question, what can they do? Okay, we have finally two major areas where a company can significantly reduce its carbon footprint. It's the energy consumption, because most of the greenhouse gas emissions are caused by energy generation. Also looking at my supply chain, and also in my sales chain. Why? Because a lot of carbon or greenhouse gas generation is happening in the supply chain. So knowing it better. So these two things are the main tasks a national Vietnamese company can undertake.
Another critical issue is the balance between economic benefits and sustainability. So what can you recommend for Vietnamese businesses to strike this balance?
Very simple. Be honest with your costs. Look what the damage can be if you do not save energy, and subsequently maybe next year your buyer or the domestic market is requiring or asking for carbon footprint disclosures. And then the costs you have to carry today in energy saving measures, for example, are nothing related to the risk you're running to lose markets. So if we contribute, if we do our best to save energy, to reduce the material inputs, to improve also our working conditions subsequently, this has an extremely positive impact. The impact in more loyalty, in better skills development. People are just proud working for you, they will learn and they will stay with you. And these are probably the major cost savings a company which is looking forward and developing will sooner or later benefit from.
We have seen many large corporations such as Unilever and Heineken to apply sustainable development model within their firms. So how relevant is this to the global trend that Vietnam has been following?
You mentioned some of the big companies like Unilever, for example, which is really doing a lot and trying also to translate this into benefits for the community. Benefits not only in having a product or having a service, it's change of mindset. Here we come to a little bit a problem that smaller businesses tend to see this and say, yeah, this is nice, but this is just too high for me. I cannot go there. So what is needed, what I said at the very beginning, is step by step, one step after the other. Then the technical requirements are not so high, and also the related investments are low to zero. Looking carefully at your machinery, if you're maintaining it correctly, and you contribute probably even much more to sustainable development by keeping your machinery 20 instead of 10 years. The longer you can use your equipment, at the end of the day, the better is your environmental footprint.
Private sector is key when it comes to sustainability, and we have seen many success stories from big corporations. What has to be done to spread the story among the business community, especially local small and medium enterprises?
I think if you look at Vietnamese economy as a whole, you will immediately find out that SMEs are still the backbone of the entire system. So creating an equal opportunity environment for those companies will be critical. They need support, they need a framework, they need the legal safety, and they want to be treated equally. And what is also needed for companies is change the culture and get away from being always scared of failing.
How is the Vietnamese community rated for their performance in social responsibilities as compared to other regional and international nations?
Okay, we have to divide it into two groups in Vietnam. Those who are part of an international supply chain, regional or really global supply chain, and those who are not. So those who are involved, these companies are doing quite well, and you find the proof, you find a lot of certificates here issued. But we have the other side, we have all those companies which are not included in international supply chains, and this also includes this big service sector, which I think about retail here. I cannot imagine that the social performance of small shops is very well. That's why, again, translating these topics into national content, that the lady at the corner knows green development is good for me and my children, and not having no idea what it means.
We now run 3 out of our 5 breweries on renewable biomass and biogas. We hope by 2018 we'll run all 5 on renewable energy. Water as well, we put a huge amount of effort into reducing our water consumption. At our breweries, we have fish tanks where the fish are swimming in the purest wastewater you'll find, because it's perfectly treated and the fish absolutely love it. So our 2 large commitments around water and energy to link to the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
This year also marked the first year that Vietnamese businesses are rated for their social responsibilities and sustainability using the CSR 100, an index initiated by the VCCI. So how does the tool facilitate businesses to strive for greater sustainability?
This benchmarking, this public rewarding of doing good is definitely a benefit. The benefit to not only those companies which are achieving these goals or performing very well, it also is a benefit to their suppliers, to all their companies active in their sphere of influence. What is now the key will be how to translate this into models which can be replicated by smaller companies. And this will be the challenge. Can this be translated now downstream into their supply chain? This is what the Global Compact, for example, is encouraging companies now. Much more, the big ones, go with your ideas, go with your know-how into your supply chain. Share it and improve not only your own business performance, but contribute to the entire country's development.
How do you assess the sustainable development potential of the Vietnamese business community?
It's great because people are innovative here, they are creative. You just have to unleash it. You have to give them the time and the freedom to do it. So transparency is definitely the number one to release creativity. And then we will see what everybody wants here, climbing up the value chain and producing more products here, also for the domestic market, sold here, money staying here in an environmentally friendly and socially responsible way, because people can track it, they know it, they can follow it, and they appreciate it. And then, at the end of the day, they will also be willing to pay this premium price for it.
Thank you for taking your time to join us.
Thank you very much.
The endorsement of the Orientated Strategy for Sustainable Development is a strategic step that will create a solid foundation for Vietnam to sustain economic growth in the future. The active participation of the business community through the representative of the Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or VCCI, in implementing this strategic orientation is a decisive factor for success and creates a dynamic partnership closely associated with the government, businesses, and other economic sectors for the sake of common targets and interests. And that also wraps up this edition of BIZLINE. Thank you very much for watching. You can always rewatch our program at vtv4.vn or youtube.com/vtv4go. From our team here in Hanoi, until next time.